Every year, millions of people set goals. They write them down, they feel excited, they tell their friends, and then something happens. By February, most of those goals are dead, not because people are lazy, not because they lack desire, but because they were never designed to survive contact with real life. The truth is, most goal-setting advice is broken. It teaches you to focus on what you want to achieve instead of who you need to become. It tells you to dream big, but gives you no system for starting small. It promises that motivation will carry you, but motivation is the least reliable fuel you can run on. This audiobook is different. It's not about setting more goals. It's about setting goals that actually work. Goals that survive your worst days. Goals that don't require you to be a different person, just a slightly better version of the one you already are. Here's what you're going to learn. You'll understand why most goals fail and how to avoid those traps from the beginning. You'll learn to build goals around identity, not outcomes, so that every action reinforces who you're becoming. You'll discover how to make your goals impossible to forget, how to design your environment so success is easier than failure, and how to track progress in a way that keeps you moving even when motivation fades. This isn't theory. This is the system that works when everything else has failed. Let's start building it. Chapter 1. The real reason goals fail. Most people think goals fail because of laziness. That's not true. Goals fail because of design flaws that were baked in from the start. Here's the problem. When you set a goal, you're probably thinking about an outcome. Lose 20 pounds, save $10,000, run a marathon. These are all outcome goals, and outcome goals have a fatal weakness. They live in the future. They exist somewhere you haven't reached yet, and every day you wake up, you're still not there. Your brain doesn't run on future rewards, it runs on present identity. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you believe you are. If you believe you're someone who doesn't exercise, then going to the gym feels like acting against yourself. It creates internal resistance. You have to fight yourself every single time. Now compare that to an identity goal. Instead of saying, "I want to lose 20 pounds, you say, "I am someone who takes care of my body." Instead of, "I want to save money," you say, "I am someone who values financial security." The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. One is about what you want. The other is about who you are. When your goal is tied to identity, every small action becomes proof. You don't need to wait until you've lost the weight to feel like you're winning. The moment you choose the salad, you've already won. The moment you go for the walk, you've reinforced the identity. You're not chasing a future version of yourself. You're becoming that person right now. This is why outcome goals feel heavy and identity goals feel light. Outcome goals require you to sustain effort until you arrive. Identity goals reward you for every step you take. And that's the difference between goals that collapse and goals that compound. Chapter 2. Start with who you want to become. If you want a goal that lasts, start by asking a different question. Not, "What do I want to achieve?" but "Who do I want to become?" This sounds simple, but most people skip it. They jump straight to the result. They want the body, the bank account, the accomplishment, but they never stop to think about the person who has those things. And that's the mistake. Here's how to fix it. Think about your goal, and then ask yourself this. What kind of person already has this? If your goal is to write a book, what kind of person finishes books? Someone who writes every day, even when it's hard. Someone who treats writing like a non-negotiable part of their life. That's the identity. Once you have the identity, reverse engineer it. If you're someone who writes every day, what does that person do? They wake up and write before checking their phone. They protect their writing time like it's sacred. They don't wait for inspiration. They show up whether they feel like it or not. Now you have a roadmap. This is called identity-based goal setting, and it works because it aligns your actions with your self-image. Your brain loves consistency. It wants your actions to match your beliefs. So when you start seeing yourself as a writer, your brain will nudge you toward writing. When you see yourself as someone who values health, your brain will make the healthy choice feel more natural. But here's the key. You don't become that person by declaring it once. You become that person by acting like them repeatedly. Every time you write, you're casting a vote for the identity. Every time you skip the junk food, you're reinforcing the belief. Over time, those votes add up. And one day, you stop trying to be that person. You just are. Chapter 3. Make your goals impossible to forget. Here's an uncomfortable fact. 50 to 70% of everyday memory failures are about forgetting intentions. You meant to call someone. You meant to go to the gym. You meant to start that project. But life got busy, and the intention disappeared. Most goals fail, not because you give up, but because you forget. You get distracted. Something urgent pulls you away. And by the time you remember, the moment has passed. This happens over and over until the goal just fades into the background. The solution is called an implementation intention. It's a simple formula. When X happens, I will do Y. Or, at time X, in place Y, I will do Z. The more specific, the better. Instead of saying, I want to exercise more, you say, every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 6 in the morning, I will go to the gym before work. Instead of, I want to read more, you say, every night after I brush my teeth, I will read for 10 minutes in bed. You're not relying on memory anymore. You're creating a trigger. Your brain loves triggers. It's built to automate patterns. When you link a new behavior to a specific time or place, your brain starts to expect it. The decision is already made. You don't have to think about whether you'll do it. You just do it, because that's what happens at 6 in the morning. That's what happens after you brush your teeth. Implementation intentions also protect your goals from interference. Life will always throw things at you. But if your goal is tied to a specific cue, it's much harder to forget. The cue reminds you. And that reminder is the difference between goals that drift and goals that stick. Chapter 4. Break it down until it feels easy. Big goals are inspiring. They're also overwhelming. And when something feels overwhelming, your brain looks for an escape. It procrastinates. It distracts. It convinces you to start tomorrow. The fix is simple. Break the goal down until it feels too easy to fail. If your goal is to write a book, don't start by trying to write a chapter. Start by writing one sentence. If your goal is to get fit, don't commit to an hour at the gym. Commit to putting on your shoes. Once the shoes are on, the rest usually follows. But even if it doesn't, you still win. You kept the promise. This is called the principle of minimum viable action. You identify the smallest possible step that still counts as progress, and you make that your standard. Not because you're lowering your expectations, but because you're building momentum. Momentum is everything. It's easier to keep moving than it is to start moving. So the goal isn't to do something impressive. The goal is to not break the chain. Every day you take the smallest action, you reinforce the habit. You prove to yourself that you're reliable, and that builds trust with yourself, which is the foundation of all lasting change. Now here's the strategy for building up from there. Once the small action becomes automatic, you increase it slightly. You wrote 1 sentence every day for a week. Now write 2. You put on your shoes and walked for 5 minutes. Next week, walk for 10. You're not trying to go from 0 to hero, you're trying to go from 0 to 1, and then from 1 to 2. This is how you reverse engineer big goals. You start at the finish line and work backward. What's the last step before completion? What's the step before that? Keep going until you reach a step so small that you could do it today. Then do it. And tomorrow, do the next one. Chapter 5. Stack your goals onto what you already do. Your life is full of automatic behaviors. You wake up, you brush your teeth, you make coffee, you check your phone. These behaviors are already wired into your brain. You don't think about them, you just do them. Now imagine you could use those automatic behaviors as anchors. Every time you finish one, you immediately start the new behavior you're trying to build. This is called habit stacking, and it's one of the most effective tools for making goals stick. Here's how it works. You take an existing habit and you link the new behavior directly to it. After I pour my coffee, I will write for 5 minutes. After I brush my teeth at night, I will set out my workout clothes for tomorrow. After I sit down at my desk, I will spend 2 minutes planning my top 3 priorities. The formula is simple. After I do behavior X, I will do behavior Y. The key is that behavior X has to be something you already do every day without fail. It has to be automatic. Because if the anchor isn't reliable, the stack falls apart. Habit stacking works because it removes the need for motivation. You're not relying on willpower to remember. You're relying on the structure you've already built. The coffee triggers the writing. The toothbrush triggers the preparation. The desk triggers the planning. You're borrowing the automaticity of the old habit to install the new one. But here's the rule. The stacked behavior has to be small. If you try to stack something big, it creates resistance, and resistance breaks the chain. So keep it tiny. You can always do more once you start. But the goal is to make sure you start. Over time, these stacked behaviors compound. One small action leads to another, and before you know it, your day is filled with habits that are pulling you toward your goals instead of away from them. Chapter 6. Design your environment, not your willpower. Here's something most people get wrong. They think success is about having more discipline, so they try harder. They white-knuckle their way through temptation, and then they wonder why it doesn't last. The truth is, willpower is a terrible strategy. It runs out. It gets depleted by stress, by decision fatigue, by a bad night's sleep. If your success depends on willpower, your success depends on conditions you can't control. The better strategy is to design your environment. Make the right choice the easy choice. Make the wrong choice harder to access. Your environment is stronger than your intentions. It wins almost every time. If you want to eat healthier, don't keep junk food in the house. You can have all the discipline in the world, but if there's a bag of chips in the pantry, you're going to eat them eventually. Remove them. Make the default option the healthy one. If the easiest thing to grab is an apple, you'll eat the apple. If you want to read more, put the book on your pillow. When you go to bed, you'll see it. You'll be reminded. And because it's right there, the friction is gone. Compare that to keeping the book on a shelf in another room. Now you have to get up, walk over, find the book, and bring it back. Every step is a chance to quit. This principle applies to everything. If you want to work out in the morning, sleep in your workout clothes. If you want to stop wasting time on your phone, delete the apps. If you want to save money, automate the transfer so the money moves before you see it. You're not fighting yourself anymore. You're making it so the path of least resistance leads where you want to go. And that's how you win. Not by being stronger, but by being smarter about the battlefield. Chapter 7. Track progress like your success depends on it. If you're not tracking, you're guessing. And guessing is how goals die quietly. Most people set a goal and then hope for the best. They work on it when they remember. They assume they're making progress. But without data, they have no idea. And when they don't see results fast enough, they assume it's not working, so they quit. Tracking solves this. It turns invisible effort into visible proof. Every time you take action, you mark it down. You see the chain of evidence building, and that chain becomes its own motivation. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need an app or a fancy system. A piece of paper works. A calendar on the wall works. The method doesn't matter. What matters is that you're creating a record. Here's why it works. Tracking gives you feedback. You can see what's working and what's not. If you're trying to write every day and you look at your tracker and see 5 blank days in a row, that's information. You're not failing, you're learning. You now know that something in your system isn't working, and you can adjust. Tracking also creates accountability. When you can see your progress, you don't want to break the streak. You've built momentum, and momentum has value. You don't want to go back to zero. So you show up, even on the days you don't feel like it, because you don't want to lose what you've built. And here's the psychological win. Tracking makes small actions feel significant. You didn't just write today, you added to the streak. You didn't just go to the gym, you hit week 3. That small shift in how you see your effort makes the effort feel worth it. So pick a method, build the habit of marking your progress, and watch how much harder it becomes to quit when the evidence is staring you in the face. Chapter 8. Prepare for the day you don't feel like it. Motivation is unreliable. Some days you'll feel it, most days you won't. And if your system depends on feeling motivated, your system is broken. The solution is to prepare for the bad days before they happen. You need a protocol, a plan for what you'll do when motivation disappears. Because it will disappear. And when it does, you need something stronger to fall back on. This is where if-then planning comes in again. But this time, you're not planning for ideal conditions. You're planning for obstacles. If I'm tired, I will still do the minimum version. If I don't have time for the full workout, I will do 10 minutes. If I'm traveling, I will write in the airport. You're creating a fallback, a way to stay in the game even when the game gets hard. Because here's the truth. The goal isn't to perform at your peak every day. The goal is to not quit. And the way you don't quit is by lowering the bar when you need to, so you can still clear it. Think about the obstacles in advance. What usually stops you? Lack of time, lack of energy, unexpected events. Write them down. Then, write down what you'll do when each one shows up. You're not hoping for perfect conditions. You're building resilience into the plan. And here's the mental shift that makes this work. You stop seeing bad days as failures. You see them as tests. The bad day is the day that separates people who reach their goals from people who don't. Most people quit when it gets hard. You don't. You do the minimum version. You show up anyway. And that's the day you actually win. Chapter 9. Build accountability that actually works. Most people think accountability means telling someone your goal. That's not enough. Telling someone feels good, but it doesn't change behavior. Real accountability is about consequences. If you want accountability that works, you need a system that makes failure uncomfortable, not punishing, not shaming, just uncomfortable enough that you'd rather take action. One way to do this is through social commitment. You tell someone your goal, and you check in with them regularly, not just once, every week, every day if necessary. You're not looking for support, you're looking for visibility. Someone is watching, and that changes how you behave. Another method is financial commitment. You put money on the line. If you don't follow through, you lose it. There are apps that do this. You set your goal, you commit money, and if you don't hit your milestones, the money goes to a charity you hate or just disappears. It sounds extreme, but it works. Loss is a stronger motivator than gain. But the most powerful form of accountability is self-accountability. This is where tracking comes back in. When you track your progress every day, you're holding yourself accountable. You can't lie to yourself. The blank spaces on the calendar don't lie. The missed days are right there. And that honesty forces you to either act or confront why you're not acting. Here's the key. Accountability isn't about pressure, it's about honesty. It's about making it impossible to ignore whether you're actually doing the work. Because most people aren't failing because they can't, they're failing because they're not paying attention. Accountability forces attention. So choose your method, pick the one that makes failure visible, and then use that visibility to stay on the path. Chapter 10. When to adjust and when to quit. Not every goal deserves to be finished. Some goals were wrong from the start. Some goals made sense when you set them, but the circumstances changed. And clinging to the wrong goal out of stubbornness isn't discipline, it's waste. The question is, how do you know when to adjust and when to quit? Here's the framework. First, ask yourself why you set the goal. Was it because you genuinely wanted it, or because you thought you should want it? If the goal was never really yours, let it go. You're not failing, you're course correcting. Second, ask yourself if the goal is still relevant. Has your life changed? Have your priorities shifted? If the goal no longer serves who you are or where you're going, it's okay to release it. Flexibility is not weakness, it's intelligence. But if the goal is still yours and it's still relevant, then the problem isn't the goal, it's the method. This is when you adjust. You don't quit. You change the approach. Maybe the timeline was too aggressive. Maybe the steps were too big. Maybe the environment wasn't set up right. You troubleshoot. You experiment. You find what works. Here's how you tell the difference. If you're avoiding the goal because it's hard, that's not a reason to quit. That's a reason to simplify. Break it down further. Lower the bar. But keep going. Hard is not the same as wrong. If you're avoiding the goal because it doesn't matter to you anymore, that's different. That's a signal. Listen to it. You don't owe the past version of yourself anything. You're allowed to change your mind. The worst thing you can do is keep working on a goal that no longer fits just because you started it. And the second worst thing you can do is quit a goal that still matters just because it got difficult. Know the difference and act accordingly. Conclusion. Your goals are waiting. You now know what most people never figure out. Goals don't fail because people are weak. They fail because they're built wrong. You've learned to start with identity, not outcomes. To make your goals impossible to forget by tying them to triggers. To break them down until they feel easy. To stack them onto behaviors you already do. To design your environment so success is the default. To track your progress so you can see the proof. To prepare for bad days before they arrive. To build accountability that actually holds you to the standard, and to know when to adjust and when to walk away. These aren't tips. This is a system. And systems don't rely on motivation, they rely on structure. Structure is what carries you when motivation fails. Structure is what turns intentions into actions, and actions into outcomes. Your goals are waiting, not in some distant future, right now. The person you want to become is built one decision at a time, one rep, one sentence, one choice. And every time you choose the aligned action, you're voting for that person. Eventually, the votes add up. And the person you are trying to become is just who you are. So stop setting goals the old way. Stop relying on motivation. Stop hoping that this time will be different. Build the system. Follow the system. And let the system carry you to the finish line.